Okay, we'll be ready to go in 1 minute. Thanks. Okay, thank you for coming for the public agenda of the NRPS meeting for Thursday, October 26, 2017, the NRPS board. Before we begin the public meeting, I'd like to remind everyone in attendance that the Police Services Board meeting is live streamed and the video recording of today's meeting will be posted on YouTube. Right off the bat, any declarations of conflict or pecuniary interest? I see none. The minutes of the previous meetings, item 200. Can I have a mover and seconder for that, please? Member Bonham, Member Ganzel. Any comments or questions on the previous minutes? I see none. All those in favor? Okay, reports from the board chairperson. Right off the bat, I'd like to talk about the fallen police officer, Craig Lehner, from the Buffalo Police. I'd ask that everyone here stand to take a moment of silence for the Buffalo Police officer, Craig Lehner, who lost his life on October 13th during a training exercise with the Buffalo Police Department Underwater Recovery Team. It saddens this board and the Niagara Regional Police Service and touches those of us who had the opportunity to meet Officer Lehner when he and his service dog Shield attended our police headquarters as graduates of the NRPS K-9 course in December 2016. There is also a deeper sense of loss among our officers who worked alongside Officer Lehner during his time in the K-9 training program and through the coordinated response with the Buffalo and NRPS dive units. On behalf of the board, we extend our sincere condolences to Officer Lehner's family, to his partnering police officers, and to his many friends and colleagues. Officer Lehner was laid to rest yesterday at a touching funeral ceremony where thousands attended to pay their respects. The board was proud of the NRPS representation. I am told that there was up to 50 officers there from the dog training unit, etc. And we support, and we'd like to offer our support for the Buffalo Police Department and his family. Let us now bow our heads in appreciation of Officer Lehner's service, and may he forever rest in peace. Please bow your heads. Thank you very much. You can sit down. Thanks. Okay, next we're going to go off the agenda a bit here. I'd like to bring up, because I'm so proud of it, is we're going to bring up first the police budget item, which is item number, in new business, item number 212. So can I have a mover and seconder, please, to put this on the floor? The Niagara Regional Police Service 2018 proposed operating budget. A mover, Member Bonham. Seconder, Member Ganzel. Chief, I'd like to defer to you then to explain this, if you don't mind, because we know it's good news. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair Gale. First of all, I want to thank you for the opportunity to present our budget to you this morning, this afternoon. Sorry, we're just past noon now, and allowing us to provide some context surrounding our current situation. I want to thank the Deputy Chiefs, both Deputy Forty and Flynn, our entire executive team, most of whom are here this morning, our senior management team, and of course Ms. Laura Rulo and Ms. Lisa DiDonato de Cellis. And there has been an incredible amount of work that has gone into this year's budget preparation, unlike anything I've ever witnessed in my tenure with the service. It's presented the service with an opportunity to take a deep look into the organization and more fully appreciate some of the challenges that are presenting themselves to us as police leaders and to you in your capacity as board members, and more broadly to our population here in the region. So as the board knows and fully appreciates, matters relating to the sustainability of policing, the need for those involved in public safety to contain costs, and for the service to operate as an entity that is focused on being efficient does not just start and stop at our region's borders. Indeed, these are issues that police services right across Canada are facing. A 2015 KPMG Comprehensive Organization Review of the Toronto Police Service identified the challenges police services in Canada are facing in the changing climate in public safety. These challenges highlighted on the slide are certainly not unique to the Toronto Police Service and are impacting police services right across Canada, including the Niagara Regional Police Service. The Niagara Regional Police Service is responsible for maintaining a safe community, not only for the residents of Niagara, but for the millions of visitors that come to the Niagara region for business and leisure. Our efforts to maintain a safe community are aligned with and support the region's strategic priority to position Niagara globally. I want to now talk about our budget approach. And by way of background or introduction, I'd like to provide the board with a framework for the process that we've undertaken to help you, the board, make an informed decision with respect to the spending of public monies. My hope is that you will see that we are trying to take an evidence-based approach to identifying our risks with a focus on identifying short-term efficiencies with the long-term goal of creating a service delivery model whereby the board, senior leaders within the service, and the men and women that are focused on keeping our communities safe are aligned with our one mission, and that it's one team with a single goal of providing the best possible service in a fiscally responsible manner. The approach that our team took to comply with the direction to the region that the region provided to the board and the board subsequently provided to me and our service was to do the following three-prong approach. First was to examine the current situation and identify the cost drivers that are impacting the budget. Secondly, we identified the means to examine areas where we might be able to repurpose resources and find efficiencies on or enhance our service delivery model. And third was to identify the risks associated with program reductions or eliminations through three separate and distinct lenses. Is it in keeping with the business plan, and would there be an impact on that? Is there an impact on the Police Services Act or adequacy standards, or is there an impact on the region's strategic priorities? Excuse me. Our 2018 budget objective was to provide you with information to help you execute your legislated responsibilities. As referenced within the Police Services Act, there are numerous factors that impact matters relating to arbitration awards and the requirement for police service boards and municipalities to provide adequate and effective policing. But that said, there is nothing in the Act that precludes a local police services board from directing its chief of police from finding cost savings by however means to offset an arbitration award. That said, the reductions, if significant, could result in the service failing to meet its obligations under the provincial adequacy standards. So starting in 2012, the service began implementing deployment strategies and efficiencies in anticipation of the transition to the new police facility that we're in here today. The cumulative savings and annual impact of those savings on our 2018 budget is valued at more than $2 million. In other words, if not for those measures that we put in place dating back to 2012, our budget impact would be $2 million higher than what it is now. As you can see from these slide, the efficiencies have seen a reduction in staffing levels from a total of 1,022 members in 2012 to 1,005 members in 2017. One of the factors impacting our ability to contain our costs is the recently arbitrated collective agreement award. Notwithstanding, as you can see, we are on the downward trend, especially the most recent settlement when compared to last year's. So as part of a program risk assessment, recognizing that 86% of the gross expenditures is made up of personnel costs, the reduction would require significant change to our current service delivery model. With this in mind, we've embarked upon an analysis by seeking to increase efficiencies while keeping in mind the business plan, provincial adequacy standards, and of course the region's priorities. Led by the command staff, the executive team completed risk assessments of each of the programs within the service. We examine our model from the perspective of frontline or first response, investigative or support services for frontline operations, and finally, other support or administrative functions. If you look at this slide here, we looked across our entire service delivery continuum. We examined our specialized support services. The simple solution is to cut programs or reduce the number of personnel in non-frontline specialized or administrative areas. The second way is to equally expect that every specialty and administrative unit reduce its authorized strength to absorb the cost and to protect our current deployment of frontline officers. These two approaches actually result in the displacement or redirecting of police officers with more seniority back to the front line, and more importantly, expecting these persons to advance the types of investigations that go with them while performing the role of a first responder. So if you look at the slide, those highlighted in red are the areas that, that we examined, we did a risk assessment on, and those are all legislated by provincial adequacy standards within the Police Services Act. The ones in black, you might look at those as being, or seeing those as possibly not being impacted or areas that we could cut. But in reality, for instance, the Professional Standards Unit, which is in black there, it's not specified or outlined specifically within the adequacy standards, but there is a requirement within the Police Services Act to conduct professional standards investigations. And the same could be said for virtually every area that is in black, although it's not specified within an adequacy standard. They are important administrative functions or support functions that help us perform the duties that are required under the Act. So I want to look at our authorized deployment since 1980. So from 1980 to 2017. Specifically, since 2010, there's been a net reduction of 32 constables authorized for deployment to the front line as first responders. This is a direct result of the service trying to address the increasing complexities of modern-day policing, such as cybercrime, internet child exploitation, vulnerable persons, and increasing demands by the courts by repurposing authorized positions as opposed to increased overall strength. Speaking to reduced deployment, while the number of officers authorized on the front line has been reducing, the minimum number of officers on the front line per the collective agreement has remained static. The service is currently in a situation where we're hiring significant numbers of officers on overtime to achieve our contractual minimum staffing levels, both on day shifts and on night shifts. To meet our minimums for 2016, the service has incurred over 30,000 overtime hours. I don't want to be overly general in what this translates to, but it's slightly higher than paying overtime for 83 hours per day every day of the year. It becomes more complicated when you consider the fact that a police officer is scheduled to work 2,080 hours per year, which is the equivalent of 14.5 officers alone. Further to that, when one considers the fact that to have one officer working every day, you actually need 1.4 officers when you consider the availability factors of our officers having to attend court, etc. I will note, if you want to just go back to that slide. So with our proposed budget, in 2017, our frontline patrol constables is showing 316. Our proposed budget will increase that number to 332, or representing 47% of the front line. And I think it's important to note as well that the population for the Niagara region, we only have stats dating back to 1996, but there's been an 11% increase in the population within the Niagara region since 1996 to 2017. So that again helps to put things in context for our ask for this year's budget. While our crime rates are are trending in the right direction. Our calls for service over the past 18 months have seen a sharp increase, a trend that we expect to see as the region continues to grow and matters that might otherwise be handled by provincially funded organizations are continually downloaded to the region and in turn to the Niagara Regional Police Service. This begs the question of why don't we increase the number of police officers working the front line, especially at a time when we're hearing from the citizens and elected officials that they want to see more officers or more boots on the ground. The answer is that the perpetual reduction of the front line over the years can be directly attributed to our seeking to meet mandated provincial adequacy standards, as well as the increased complexities of modern-day policing, be it cybercrime, internet child exploitation, vulnerable persons, the increasing demands placed on investigators by the courts, just to name a few. We need not look at the emerging pressures associated with the opioid crisis, the legalization of marijuana, mental health, and many other partners in public safety reducing their budgets and the duties of first response falling to us. Okay. As detailed throughout this presentation, we're evidence-driven and focused on finding efficiencies. We've recently embarked upon a number of processes, one of which is to specifically understand the actual pressures we face on the front line. The source of the data is information entered into a computer-aided dispatch system within Versaterm. This is the model that's used by the RCMP in British Columbia, the Edmonton Police, and a number of agencies in the U.S. as they have tried to better measure their services. A more fulsome understanding of information regarding response time, time spent on calls for service, proactive time, non-calls for service, which is the time used for the and other than calls for service that keep frontline units from responding to calls. This includes report writing, both first and subsequent instances, and other follow-up investigative tasks such as meeting with Crown Counsel, court time, and interviews not possible to complete in the first instance due to the availability of interviewees. Classroom training that is less than the length of a shift would also be included in this figure. The same is true for constable-initiated activities such as traffic stops that result in an arrest or a serious event that a member comes upon during routine patrol. The overall goal of this review is to have evidence-based data to better understand all of the drivers that impact the availability of our officers. The second is a broader examination of our service delivery model. Dr. Workman Stark, a retired chief superintendent in the RCMP and is a published author and teacher at Athabasca University, has met with our command team, and Dr. Workman Stark has expressed a willingness to work with us through a service delivery review. This review will be led by Deputies Forty and Flynn, and we're optimistic that the service delivery review will identify efficiencies, develop a service delivery model that is aligned with our business plan and the region's strategic priorities, and the new Police Services Act that is expected to be released in the fall of 2017. The proposed 2018 operating budget of $143.5 million includes a $6.2 million increase, or a 4.5% base increase. The $6.2 million cost drivers include this 2018 collective agreement arbitration award, the impact of salary days adjustment, and by that I mean the fact that there is one additional salary day in 2018 results in an increase of about $500,000 on our budget. And the opening of the provincial courthouse in Welland are just some of the factors that have impacted on this budget. In addition to our program risk assessments, our mitigation strategies included a detailed line-by-line review of discretionary spending and cost recovery opportunities. Budget requests are validated based on historical spending, and the budget includes user fee increases and discretionary spending decreases. Ongoing review of administrative policies, procedures, procurement opportunities, and these reviews have led to non-discretionary savings. Examples include the updated vehicle take-home policy the change in vehicle servicing policy, which will see our vehicles serviced on I'm just trying to remember the frequency now. I think the frequency is every 13,000 kilometers as opposed to 8,000 kilometers, which means that our vehicles will still maintain the safety that is required to keep them on the streets, but a vehicle will be touched 24 times as opposed to 32 times over a lifespan. Just another way that we're trying to achieve efficiencies. And our contract reviews, such as Green Shield and our recent switch to Bell for our mobile devices. Addressing the ever-changing operational needs, the community expectations, and legislative requirements through the reprioritization of resources. An example is the recent front desk program change, which is referenced later in the presentation. The program operating budget includes a net program change reduction of $39,332. That includes considered and found alternatives for $800,000 in program changes. As part of our budget deliberations, we had about $800,000 in program changes that were brought forward. All of them, honestly, were legitimate program changes that we have looked at other alternatives of being able to deliver those program changes without being able to impact the operational budget. A false alarm fee increase. The false alarm program has not been updated since 2010. In November, the service will be recommending changes designed to continue to effectively and efficiently further reduce the number of false alarms for service while maintaining cost recovery. The board has received and approved a recommendation for the service regarding front desk staffing. The net impact will be a saving of $200,000, and the program change will repurpose 8 uniform officers that are currently working at the desk and put them out to frontline policing duties, which we know will go a long way to assist in reducing overtime. Additionally, the service is recommending an increase in the frontline patrol complement of 8 uniform officers to be predominantly offset by a reduction in overtime. Ultimately, the recommended budget will see an increase of 16 officers back to the front line. So as a result of your supporting our budget, proposed budget, the region and the citizens we serve will continue to realize a number of benefits. These benefits are not limited to, but include the following: enhanced engagement with the community. We've talked about that at length as our vision going forward. We want our officers engaging with the public, and we feel it goes a long way in terms of reducing crime and, again, just improving that overall trust with the community. Our ability to maintain public safety. We'll maintain the ability to respond to calls for service in a timely manner. The continuity of high-risk files within our specialized investigative units. Efficient management of resources will decrease our reliance on overtime by increasing the number of officers on the front line. Support of regional priorities, like having a region that moves people and goods and promotes economic development across our region. The modernization of policing services. We're not sure what's in store for us in terms of the Police Services Act, which will be coming forward in later this month or early in November. But we know that there will be changes, and we believe that this budget will help us address those changes. And again, our ability to support emerging legislation, such as the cannabis legislation and the emerging laws, such as the recent Regina versus Jordan decision. And of course, will allow us to continue to be compliant with the provincial adequacy standards. If we look at this slide, it shows us the historical budget increases. And as you can see, as a Police Services Board, you've provided the framework for our seeking efficiencies while maintaining modest growth, especially when compared to increases in the past terms or over the last 15 years. Even with a 4.5% increase this year, it translates to a 9.44% increase over the last four-year term. This is comparative to 17% and 30% over similar timeframes. So that highlights our budget proposal, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Chief. Member Barrick.
Great, thank you, Chair. Through you, I really don't have any questions, but I will make some comments and maybe some additional highlights. But first and foremost, I do want to take the opportunity to thank the Chief, as well as the deputies and your respective teams, for this this budget presentation and the budget that you've brought forward. Wearing another hat, I am the budget chair for the Niagara region, and so it's often recognized that we like to use existing resources better, and this budget certainly does that. I know that at first blush, 4.5% seems to be a little bit out of the norm, and that's what I want to touch on. And what I will say again is I fully support and endorse this budget, and here's why. We have challenges for this budget round that we haven't had before. In particular, as was highlighted in the presentation, the arbitrated settlement had an impact of 4.9% all by itself for 2018, and we're coming in at 4.5. So that speaks very loudly to looking internally, looking how to do business differently, and on top of that, being able to add 16 frontline officers, 8 repurposed, 8 new officers on top of that, and coming in at 4.5%, recognizing again, I would argue, the arbitrated settlement that is hitting us in the 2018 year. We look at slide 6 of the presentation, and thanks for that information and highlighting that, because I think it's really important. Over the last 20 years or so, this board, in particular thanks to Member Bonham for his efforts throughout that process, this board had an impact on an ability to, I would say, have a good value for the community that we serve with respect to impacting the arbitrated settlement this last round. And the chart very clearly articulates the previous settlements, both mutually agreed and arbitrated, and this round is quite successful. For, again, I would say the community that we serve and its impact. And part of that strategy is why we have the 4.9% impact to deal with now. And I would say that the service has done an incredible job doing that. Slide 9. Again, this is tremendous information. Slide 9 is good because, like the last 40 years or so, give or take, there's been a trend of the percentage of all sworn members being frontline has been declining significantly from 67, 68% to 45% this year. And for the first time, we are actually going to be reversing that trend of frontline officers. And I think that can't be understated. And finally, I think slide 15 as well. Slide 15, I think, may demonstrate a change of approach over time. When you see the term 2003 to 2006 had over 30% budget increase, trending towards, and again, a great trending towards this term, under 10%, recognizing there's still one more year. That does very clearly demonstrate to me a pathway to a more financially sustainable organization, and I'm very proud to be part of that. and having that impact. And I'm proud of the service for working with the board towards that end. This has been, in my view, a Herculean effort, Chair, and I believe the chief stated it as well. It was one of the biggest challenges from a budget perspective, and I think you mentioned about 10 years or so, or that you've seen. And we all agree, it is a significant challenge, and the service and the chief and the deputies, they did more than meet the challenge. They have really come to the table. They've looked internally. They've done the line by line. They're doing business differently. They're repurposing on a go-forward basis as well. There's plans to continue that to not just look at the revenue side of the ledger, but to also look at the expense side of the ledger. Again, using existing resources differently. And in my view, the board, the executive, and the service, again, in my view, are more aligned now than any other time, certainly in this term that I've been here. And for that, thank you very much, Chief, for the budget presentation today. Fully support it, endorse it, and I will go to bat at Niagara Region for this as well. Thank you.
Member Barrick, thank you for that. Member Castellan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll apologize up front to those who heard me speak about this already in confidential, but it's worth repeating in some instances. I started the day off today at the Economic Summit, the Niagara Economic Summit at White Oaks, and we're learning how Niagara is growing, and with that growth obviously comes the need for more security, or better security, more policing, and the costs associated with that. So I want to recognize the fact that over these last few years that I've actually been part of the board, Niagara is growing and continues to grow. And despite those pressures that are influencing our budget, our staff and our chief will be able to keep that under wraps. And I use slide 6. Well, I can use slide 15 since it's on the screen already first to look at the trend that you see there, which is if we average the 4 columns that are on the chart, you'll see that you know, the last column is about half the average of the other columns. So I mean, this is a dramatic difference from where we have been in the past. And I do recall seeing lots of media coverage of police board increases or police increases, and I think we finally come to grips with what we need to increase the budget by, and have done a fabulous job in doing so. Also, when I look at the slide 6 that has the collective agreement increases on it, if you just go back to slide 6, same story. You see the trend is downward, which is what we're looking for, obviously, as a board and representing the taxpayers. Adding the extra officers is important. I truly believe that officers deserve a fair wage, and I think that I'm proud to say that we are providing that. I'm sorry to hear about the arbitration system in the province that we continually see is broken, and despite our advocacy with the ministry, the arbitration system fails to recognize regions' ability to pay as one of the criteria for judging on the settlements. We heard from staff that if we had not had the arbitrated settlement, that we would have been in a negative increase situation at 4.9%, you know, when we're talking about an increase today of 4.5%. So I'd like to congratulate the chief and staff and everybody that's worked behind the scenes on pulling this together and pulling the numbers down to where they need to be. And I definitely support the 4.5% increase. And again, I will do so as chair of the region at the regional level. I think it's well deserved. I think it's financially prudent. And if you could just go to the last slide. I just wanted to recognize the chief for, last slide, his innovative way to save on gas money. Kidding, but I think it's well worth noting that the community engagement piece that Chief McCullough and Deputy Chiefs Flynn and Forty will be bringing to our community in the future is definitely something we heard loud and clear in our community as something that they wanted to see. And this demonstrates just, in fact, that's what they're doing already. So great job, Chief and staff, in bringing this forward, landing it at 4.5%. Thank you.
Member Gansell.
Thank you, Chair. And not to repeat from the previous board members, but I'd be very amiss if I didn't comment in the positive light that for the chief and his executive team of the 2 deputies and finance staff, I think this is an excellent budget and one that I think the board, as you've heard before, is very supportive and certainly recognizes the need to improve our frontline, I'll call it visibility. So with the additional 8 officers plus the other 8 from a redeployment, having the 16 out there and the potential of getting a firm grip on some of the overtime costs with the additional officers. Our population has grown. There are more demands on policing, especially in some of the areas of we're getting the call at 3 in the morning, which is probably a mental health issue, but who else are they calling? And we've heard that in other presentations as well, that we end up responding, which calls of service and everything else have gone up. But I think it's important that we as a service have been able to address what I call a changing society and put in place, as you've indicated in your budget, the mechanism and the support not only for our officers but for the community to address that. And moving forward, I think this is a very good position for us financially. And I mean, not to take away that it's an increase, and everyone would like to see a lesser increase, but that's the reality. We were left with an arbitration decision which was not in our control, but again, we've mitigated those numbers, and again, support from your staff in finding other savings reduced that percentage increase. So again, thank you for your work and the team in the service that represents us so well on the front line. Thank you.
Vaughn.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, again, without reiterating anything anybody else has said, congratulations and thanks for all the hard work of not only the chief and the deputies, but the support staff and finance, to Lisa and Laura for all of their hard work. I was especially, like Member Gansell, impressed with the idea of improving things on the front line, and I look forward to perhaps even a little more work and harder work for another year to see if we can, I think, repurposing overtime money into actual boots on the ground. Anything we can do there is just providing better service for the same money. And I think that's probably part of the goal in this is, as a board member, I've always been most interested in the idea that we spend our money well. And, you know, sometimes you have to ask for more because that's just the nature of the beast, but you also have to spend what you can get and spend it as efficiently and get the most out of it that we can. Sometimes it feels like it might be the 5 loaves and 2 fishes model of things, but nonetheless we work at it and we work hard at it, and I congratulate you for your efforts on this budget, and I'm very supportive of it and very supportive of the direction shown in this budget. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Laura. Can you please change to slide 14, please? I take no credit for this. It's the service, the chief, the deputy chiefs, and it's been a pleasure with the reaction with our board and how this has been brought about. And I really thank Member Barrick because, as everyone knows, we had a member that moved out of the province and he was finance chair for our board, and I'm the de facto chair. And Member Barrick, I thank you for your help with, especially because you're finance chair at the region. I thank Member Caslin, being chair of the region, for providing the finance people to help us when we don't have a finance person. That was a sudden departure of our member at that time, so thank you for your help on this. But I'm really proud in slide 14, the top left corner, the first one saying, and the chief went one more word more, he said enhanced engagement with the community. That tells me he gets it, we think alike, that's everything. I don't forget about anything else, but that was number one with everybody we talked to, the mayors, the citizens and everything, the community in that. So I thank you all for getting the idea and coming aboard with this. I won't get into the numbers because you've already said it all to us, but I'm proud to be here and I'm proud of the relationship we have. I hope it continues that way. So thank you. So I guess we have to vote on this. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. So I'm going back to my comments, because I know we have a couple of members that have meetings here, even here in the building, so I'll be losing them as we go along. My next comment is the Niagara Police Service Board provincial appointment. As part of today's agenda, you will see an update from the Ministry of Community Safety and Correctional Services on the status of the vacancy for the provincial appointment of the board for the position formerly held by Bob Marshall, like I said, with the finance chair of our board. I want to remind everyone that the Niagara Police Services Board has been proactive in the regard to call for greater equity and diversity in the public appointment process. I really hope, I'm trying to word this right, but I really hope I see a female or somebody of, I'm going to say it wrong, not a white Anglo-Saxon guy up here for the next appointment. And I'm hoping, I hope somebody gets it. And I don't care who it is, as long as they're smart and they aid the board. And if I chose the wrong words, I apologize, because no matter what line I walk on that, I'm picking the wrong words. But regardless, I hope that the next appointment takes into account these items. Board members have been encouraging qualified members from Niagara's diverse communities to apply, and have since had inquiries from women and visible minorities who are interested in becoming police board members. The board has also corresponded with Ontario Premier Kathleen Wynne and Community Safety and Correctional Services Minister Marie-France Lalonde to encourage the upcoming appointment process, embrace the opportunity to reflect Niagara's growing diversity. The current vacancy will provide an opportunity for the province to promote diversity among its police board representatives as an integral part of good governance. Next, the introduction of NRPS Executive Command Team to Regional Council. On October 5th, members of the board attended the Regional Council meeting for the formal introduction of Chief McCullough and the NRPS Executive Command Team Deputies Chiefs Flynn and Forty. Each provided a presentation on the roles and responsibilities of their assigned positions, and they spoke to the service's goals and objectives developed to provide adequate and effective police services in the areas they oversee. I also thank Member Stewart for showing up at that meeting. The next was Kristen French CACN Second Annual Spotlight Gala. On October 19th, Member Stewart attended the Kristen French Child Advocacy Center of Niagara's Second Annual Spotlight Gala at Club Roma in St. Catharines. The gala commemorated October as the Child Abuse Prevention Month in recognition of the children and youth who have either witnessed violence or have been victims of physical or sexual abuse or internet luring. Next, a great day for tomorrow is the swearing-in ceremony for Chief Brian McCullough. Are you going to be there, Brian? Okay. Tomorrow, October 27th, the board will be hosting the swearing-in ceremony for Chief McCullough in recognition of his official appointment as Chief of Police on September 28th. The event will take place at Club Italia in Niagara Falls, and the formal part of the ceremony will begin at 2 p.m. and will be followed by a celebratory reception. On behalf of the board, I encourage members of the service and the public, and I can't say that enough, members of the public to come and share in this proud and historic moment for the Niagara Regional Police Service. You won't see this again for at least another 5 years. I really suggest anybody from the public, that senior citizens or whatever, come on out and see what it's like to have a new chief sworn in, because there'll be police from other forces. They'll be in their, I don't know what you call it, number 1 formal attire and that. So we'd appreciate anyone showing up to this celebration. Next is the Regional Municipality of Niagara NRPS Joint Facilities Steering Committee meeting. In his role as chair of the board's Accommodations Committee, Vice Chair Ganzel will be attending the next joint Regional Police Facilities Steering Committee meeting for discussion on police facility matters on October 31st. I missed, didn't I? We were going to talk about that earlier, but okay. The NRPS Niagara Falls Community Engagement Night. The service will be hosting its first Niagara Falls Community Engagement Night on November 1st from 7 to 9 p.m. at the Americana Conference Resort and Spa in Niagara Falls. The event will provide the public with an opportunity to address community concerns during a question and answer session, as well as discussions on crime prevention tips, community safety issues, crime trends in the Niagara Falls area, and an introduction to the specialized units that are available in the community. Members of the public are encouraged to attend. Any board members interested in attending the event are asked to confirm with board staff. Next, a licensing public consultation meeting. The board's licensing committee will hold a public meeting on November 9th at 9:30 a.m. to consider the licensing and regulation governing vehicles for hire and businesses. The board will be discussing matters such as the Transportation Network Companies, the TNC's, licensing system, including background checks and the driver license application process, as well as region-wide use of taxi licenses and taxi quotas, the removal of automatic appeals and licensing fees. The board has invited all interested parties to attend and share their views as part of the consultation process, and industry representatives are encouraged to provide input on the bylaws proposed amendments to ensure that all the necessary checks and balances are in place. Again, that's November 9th at 10:30 a.m. Next, Deputy Chief Flynn, introduction ceremony. I imagine you'll be there, eh, Brett? Thank you. The board will be hosting an introduction ceremony for newly appointed Deputy Chief Flynn in recognition of his official appointment as Deputy Chief of Operations on September 28th. The ceremony is being held here in the community room on November 10th from 2 to 4 p.m., and members of the service and the public are invited to attend. Further details will be announced closer to that date. Then the OAPSB 2017 Labor Seminar. The Ontario Association of Police Service Boards is hosting a labor seminar on November 16th and 17th at the Holiday Inn Toronto Airport Hotel. The program is designed to provide various representations of the policing community an opportunity to participate in panel discussions on coordinated collective bargaining and other current labor issues. Bargaining Committee Chair Terry Bonham and Member Vaughn Stewart will be attending on behalf of the board. Upcoming PSB meetings. The next PSB committee meeting will be Thursday, November 9th in the community room at police headquarters. Closed session meetings begin at 8:30 a.m. and public sessions begin at 10:30. Next board meeting. The next board meeting is Thursday, November 23rd at 8:30 a.m. and will be held at the Welland City Hall Council Chambers, Civic Square, and the NRPS will open the meeting with a public presentation about local community safety issues. In 2016, the board decided to change the location of its meeting in an effort to promote awareness of the role of the board and to stay in touch with community concerns over policing issues, and held its first off-site meeting in Port Colborne. Building on the success of that meeting, the board wanted to continue to be proactive in engaging, educating, and hearing from the public by holding at least 2 off-site meetings each year. On May 25th, 2017, the board met at the town of West Lincoln, and the upcoming meeting in November 23rd will conclude the board's 2017 off-site meeting schedule. The off-site meetings will resume in 2018 with our April 26th meeting being held in the town of Fort Erie and our September 27th meeting being held in the town of Niagara Lake. These off-site meetings were set in collaboration with Mayor Doug Joyner, Mayor Frank Campion, Mayor Wayne Redekop, Regional Councillor Sandy Annunziata, and Lord Mayor Pat Dart, as they recognize the value of having the board meeting at their council chambers so their citizens can participate or inquire into anything police-related. By holding meetings at locations other than police headquarters, it makes the board members more accessible and connected to different communities in our great region. And I can't go out of my way enough to say, if anybody's listening to this, which I hope they are, in Welland, if you have an issue and you want to bring it up, just be respectful and we'll listen to you. Just apply to Deb if you have a presentation to make, or if you have any questions. Again, I ask you to be respectful and have respectful questions, and we'll answer them, or we will get them answered. So if anybody from the Welland area or any area wants to attend that meeting and has any questions about policing, we'll hope to answer those. Last but not least, that's it. I defer to you, Chief, for any comments you have.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start off with regards to our marijuana growing operation seizures. So for the month of September, we seized $67,000 worth of estimated street value of marijuana. That brings the total amount up to $4.4 million. You'll hear later on in my verbals, we had a significant seizure of marijuana in the month of October, which is not reflected in this number here, but the October stat is significant. For homicides for 2017, we continue to have 2 homicides that have occurred since the beginning of the year. And comparatively, we had 1 homicide in 2016 and 6 homicides in 2015. So we're optimistic that the trend will continue for 2017. Robberies for the month of September in the Niagara region, we had 15 robberies. 7 of those robberies have been cleared, and 8 of those investigations are still ongoing. So that represents a 46% clearance rate for the robberies. Traffic fatalities or serious collision statistics, we had 2 fatals and 1 life-threatening motor vehicle collision for the month of September. And if I look at our year-to-date statistics, the number of fatal collisions, we've had 14 so far this year, and so that's basically 2/3 of the year completed, and as of the end of September, and for all of 16, we had 20 fatal collisions. I do want to talk about one of those collisions occurred on September the 25th at approximately 2:34 p.m. Police responded to a report of a vehicle collision in the intersection of Garrison Road at Thompson Road in Fort Erie. Initial investigation revealed that a 17-year-old male was operating a 2009 Dodge Journey with 5 teenage friends in the vehicle. The vehicle was traveling east on Garrison Road when it entered the intersection and was struck by a 2014 BMW that was being driven on Thompson Road by a 63-year-old male. Collision caused the Dodge to roll onto its roof and slide into the traffic light standard. A 16-year-old male passenger from Fort Erie was seated in the Dodge. He received life-threatening injuries, transported to the Western New York Hospital, or to a Western New York hospital, where he later succumbed to his injuries. The collision is being investigated by detectives from our collision reconstruction unit and remains under investigation. Second incident happened on Tuesday, September the 26th at approximately 4:21 p.m. We responded to a report of a pedestrian being struck by a motor vehicle at the intersection of Pine Street South and Albert Street West in the city of Thorold. Investigation revealed that a 65-year-old female resident of Thorold was crossing Pine Street when she was struck by a 2014 Hyundai Elantra that was making a turn from Albert Street onto Pine. The female pedestrian was airlifted to an out-of-town hospital with life-threatening injuries. The 59-year-old female driver of the Hyundai did not suffer any injuries. On Sunday, October 1st, the 65-year-old female pedestrian succumbed to her injuries, and that incident remains under investigation by our collision reconstruction unit as well. A life-threatening injury occurred on September the 15th at approximately 8:25 p.m. We responded to a report of a single motor vehicle collision on Ridge Road North near Bertie Street in the town of Fort Erie. Investigation revealed that 2008 Pontiac G6 was being driven southbound on Ridge Road North by a 19-year-old male when he lost control of the vehicle, left the roadway, struck a hydro pole, and then a tree before coming to rest in the front yard of a residence. The vehicle caught on fire, and the 2 male occupants from Fort Erie had to be rescued by the residents of the home. Driver suffered life-threatening injuries and was transported to a Western New York hospital in critical condition. The 16-year-old passenger suffered serious injuries and was transported to an out-of-town hospital as well. And that investigation remains under investigation by our collision reconstruction unit. Some incidents in the news. On September the 25th, there was a disturbance reported to the Niagara Regional Police in the North End residential neighborhood of Niagara Falls. When we arrived on scene, discovered 2 males suffering from minor injuries. An investigation into the incident revealed that one of the males had been the victim of an attempt robbery, while the other was alleged to have committed the offense. A 43-year-old Niagara Falls resident has been arrested and charged with break, enter, and commit assault with a weapon, robbery, and use an imitation firearm in commission of an indictable offense. On September the 28th, members of the Niagara Falls Street Crime Unit arrested a male after observations of him selling drugs from his residence, a local bar, and a parking lot. The male was arrested and without incident while walking back after conducting a drug transaction. He was found in possession of 3.5 grams of heroin with a street value of about $1,100. In late January of this year, the same male was arrested by 2 district uniform officers for possession of the purpose of trafficking cocaine and had been released on a recog. Just an update with regards to, we had reported at our last meeting regarding a couple that was wanted in connection with a crime spree that had occurred throughout Ontario. On 29th of September, Kevin Stapleford, Frank Alanza, and Rachel Hayden were located and arrested in York Region. And there was a media release that went out on September 28th in regards to the original crime spree. There were a total of 8 other police services that were involved with investigations involving these two on a number of charges ranging from theft of vehicle to theft of gas and shoplifting incidents. Over 25 known interactions during this crime spree dating from August the 18th to September the 26th. On October the 4th, the individual was arrested and charged with fraud. Stems from an investigation that started in August of 2017, where our fraud unit received information about a large-scale fraud which was alleged to have been committed by a male who was contracted to provide delivery service for a local media corporation. The investigation revealed that he was advanced funds that he fraudulently converted to his personal use. And a 44-year-old Thorold man is now facing fraud charges. With regards to the marijuana grow operations that were shut down in Beamsville that I highlighted earlier, that occurred on October the 4th, members from our Guns, Gangs, and Grow unit concluded an investigation into 2 Beamsville locations for unlawfully producing marijuana. Police were aware that each of these locations had legitimate medical marijuana licenses. However, from the investigation, we learned that people were providing Health Canada with fraudulent information in order to obtain multiple medical marijuana licenses for each address, and as a result, these marijuana grows were found to be unlawful. 4 men were charged and arrested with a total of 14,000 marijuana plants with a street value of approximately $14 million, and 142 pounds of dried processed marijuana with a street value of $284,000 was seized. This large number of marijuana plants seized exceeded the license by over 10,000 plants. So in other words, they were licensed for 4,000 and they had 14,000 plants. Assault charges. On August the 4th, members of the two district criminal investigation unit began an investigation into an unprovoked assault on persons, including children, that occurred in the area of Clifton Hill. Investigation led to the identification of 2 males suspected of committing an assault. One was arrested a short time after the assault, and an arrest warrant was issued for another man. On October the 5th, members of the 2 district criminal investigation unit received information that the male was staying at a home in Mississauga, where he was later arrested. During the arrest, we located 1 kilo of cocaine, now 9 pounds of marijuana, and approximately $108,000 in Canadian currency. Further investigation revealed a secondary location associated to these parties. Members of our CIB unit obtained a search warrant for the location, which contained 2.5 kilograms of cocaine, 5 ounces of heroin, and 4 ounces of MDMA, and 1 pound of marijuana. So since the start of that investigation, we've seized over $250,000 in narcotics and approximately $200,000 in Canadian currency. In June of 2017, we began receiving numerous calls from residents of Pelham about a male operating a blue and white Suzuki sport bike in the area of Regional Road 20 and Welland Road, Canberra Road in Fenwick. Motorcycle was being operated in a dangerous manner. Complaints concern the reckless operation of a motorcycle at speeds in residential areas in excess of 140 kilometers an hour, with the rider pulling wheelies along residential streets. The behavior began to escalate and culminated in the male pulling high-speed wheelies on 3 separate occasions through a Port Colborne school zone, followed by flight from police. A joint investigation commenced involving uniform officers from our 3 district and 6 district offices, and the investigators also received information from the Ontario Provincial Police. As a result, a 25-year-old Pelaman was arrested and charged with a number of offenses, including flight from police and theft. On October 14th, the Niagara Regional Police Service received information that 2 young females were involved in the sex trade and were being housed at a local hotel in Niagara Falls. Initially, uniformed members attended and commenced an investigation. Our detectives became involved in that, and with their assistance, along with the Special Investigative Services Morality Unit, commenced a follow-up investigation into human trafficking. And as a result, 2 males from Hamilton were arrested and charged with human trafficking-related offenses. Another incident involving human trafficking, in the early morning hours of October 17th, a uniformed officer in Niagara Falls observed suspicious activity involving a motor vehicle. The officer conducted an investigation and located an adult male and a young female. Officers were then directed to a motel in the area of Main and Stanley. At the hotel, officers located 2 additional young females in a room and arrested 3 males for human trafficking related offenses. As a result of the investigation, a 16-year-old male, a 17-year-old male, who both cannot be identified under the Youth Criminal Justice Act, and an 18-year-old male, all facing 8 different charges in relation to this incident. And finally, since the beginning of October, members of our Guns, Gangs, and Grow unit have been investigating an incident on Barbicane Trail in St. Catharines, where residents were selling drugs. On October the 19th, the target of the investigation drove his vehicle to conduct a transaction on Carriage Road in St. Catharines. Upon conducting his transaction, police approached and arrested him. He applied for a search warrant to enter the residence on Barbicane Trail. We encountered 2 females in the driveway where they were also arrested, and we searched the residence and located and seized a very large quantity of powerful prescription medication. The medications include oxycodone, hydromorphone, codeine, and fentanyl. In total, we seized $58,000 in drugs and about $6,300 in cash. And that's all I have. Thanks.
Any questions for the chief? Chief, I have one question that disgusts me, and that's the 2 females that were held at against their will in the sex trade. When do we get concerned? Because those things don't happen down here, yet they did. And I don't know how much more you can expand on the conversation, but I've heard other people talk and say, we didn't think this would ever happen in Niagara Falls. And I started thinking of those 2 ladies that were, 2 ladies held in Cleveland a year ago or something like this. Am I taking it to another level that I shouldn't be, or can you comment at all?
I mean, I can comment to this level, I guess, that whenever we receive information about those types of occurrences, we take them very, very seriously, and we investigate them aggressively, whether it's through our frontline uniform officers, who would in most cases be the initial response, but supported by our various investigative units. And if anybody has information, if they want to come forward with that information through Crime Stoppers, we're happy to receive it any time, and we'll investigate those matters. Unfortunately, they do happen in Niagara, perhaps not as prevalent as in other jurisdictions, but we will investigate those and take them very seriously.
So as a father with daughters, and anybody with daughters starts thinking, do I have to worry about my daughters walking down the street and being held at and you can't expand on it, but I have to ask the questions. Do somebody watching this right now be concerned about their daughters being held against their will, or is there more to it that, I'm walking a fine line again here, but I just want to make sure that the people aren't concerned that their daughters can't go out at nighttime without worry that they're going to be taken to Niagara Falls or some city and held in this type of industry. Is that an unheard of, unfair comment by me?
I think it's fair to say that there's more to the story than what we can reveal here. That said, I mean, I think any of our daughters should take precautions when they're out walking late at night, the buddy system, and be aware of their surroundings. You know, we're very fortunate in Niagara. We have a safe community. But with that said, you know, everybody needs to take as many precautions as possible so that they don't become victimized.
Okay, it says everything to me when you say there's more to it than what you can say. I get it, so, okay, thank you. Okay, thank you for that. So next, I'm going to move in block there's no presentations in that. I'm going to move in block the consent agenda items number 201, and as well the supplemental agenda items, which are items all the way up to 218. So 201 to 218. Deb said the service might want to comment on items 216 and 217, the business plan and the mobile subscriber identity technology. But I'm going to entertain it with the members of the board here if they have any questions on each item, and then I'm going to allow it for if these don't come up by the questions, I'll ask the chief to comment on them. So who wants to lead off with any consent agenda items? Member Stewart, please tell me which one you have.
Yes, 206 from the authorized strength.
Oh, can I have a mover and seconder on this first, please? Member Stewart, Member Caslin. Okay, go ahead, please.
Just a question on page 2, especially under the civilian. We're authorized for 307. There's 285. That's a difference of 22. And I don't know if that's just a snapshot in time issue or whether we've got something going on there. So I was just kind of curious. It seems like
Chief,
a substantial difference.
I remember I sent an email if there's any comments you want to make on this report. So, but if there's only the question from Member Stewart, that's great. So go ahead.
So with regards to the civilians, we've had a new general order that was implemented with regards to civilian job postings. We had a few hiccups with regards to that process, and as a result, we are now filling those vacancies through the job posting process, but we did fall behind, and a lot of those jobs were filled with temporary employees until those job postings can be done.
So it's just a timing issue then?
Yes, it's a timing issue.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on item 206? Member Stewart, do you have any other ones there? Anyone else have any other questions on any consent agenda items? If you're looking, I'll hit one with mine. Okay. Item number 210, Chief, the secure holsters and that. My question is, since the Niagara Parks Commission, the Niagara Parks Police fall under us, do they have to follow these same rules with sidearms and that?
They're issued the same sidearms and holsters that we have, and to undergo the same training that our officers undergo.
So would they follow the same rules that we have here about holsters and that that we have?
Yes, they do.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on item 210? That's the only one I had questions on. Member Ganzel, if you have some items.
Sorry, how far did you go?
All the way to 218. I can give you a break if you want. Chief, do you have any comments on item 216 or 217 that the service wanted to make on those two reports? Deb said that you might want to, you had some comments on it. If you don't, that's fine.
I got to find them. I don't.
The NRPS Business Plan Activity Report and the use of international mobile subscriber identity technology. If you don't, that's fine.
I don't at this time.
Okay, that's good. Yes, sir.
Through you, Chair, and thank you. I just want, it was a question on 210, which was the secure holster item. Just the only question I have on that is there's reference there to something called a belt keeper. Is that just a thing on the belt that keeps the stuff from sort of sliding around the belt?
So it's a nylon webbed keeper, I guess, that snaps under the belt that's worn on the pants and goes over top of the gun belt itself and keeps it from shifting and moving around on the waste.
Okay, that qualifies what it was. I was trying to figure, what is this? Okay, thank you.
Any other ones? No other questions? Okay, we have a mover and second. All those in favor of accepting these? Carried. Next, we have a bunch of items to go into camera, and then I know Member Caslin has a question in new business. So item number C218 to C228, C4 and C5 are all to be moved into the public. I'd like to move them in block if I could. Can I have a mover and seconder, please? Member Caslin, Member Stewart. Any comments or questions on these moving public? All those in favor? Carried. New business. Member Caslin.
Thank you. I continually get questions about the District 1 police station and what the status is of it. And I know there's been some meetings. I know there's been some canceled meetings, but I wonder through you, Mr. Chair, if we could get a current update to put on public record, just so people are aware of what the current status is and perhaps next steps.
So I'll defer to my vice chair or the chief. Do you want to handle this, or go ahead, and then chief, you make some comments?
Just to answer broadly on this, we were going to have a meeting this past Tuesday. It was canceled so that we could have a discussion on some budget items with our annual budget. I can only basically sort of say that we're in a position where at the next Facilities Committee meeting, which would be in November 9th, I would hope at that point in time we have a fulsome report back to that committee with a direction and strategy where we were going with that, so the board can address it fully at this meeting in November.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry?
Any comments from the chief or service? Thank you.
We're optimistic that we can reach that November 9th date. It may bleed over into December, but we are working with the architect to try and finalize the design for what one district will look like. And again, we're optimistic that we can reach that November 9th date, but it may carry over to December.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Am I correct in recalling that we were very close on achieving our budgeted cost, and also we're confirmed on the St. Catharines site?
The last comment I had, and I'll go back a month and a half ago, was we're close. And I said close. My comment was close doesn't cut it. It has to be, and it doesn't change. I guess they're close, I'm being told right now, but again, close doesn't cut it with me. We're offering great service in St. Catharines and that, but it has to be bang on or less. But I don't see that too much. So
thank you.
Thank you. The site, please hit your mic if you don't mind.
The site is still the site that was purchased and what we're committed to.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the board? Any new business? Chief, do you have anything else?
I have nothing further. Thank you.
Good job. Thank you very much. And we're done. Thank you.
Thank you.